Welcome back to the Logic Exchange. I'm your host, Nick Thompson. I'm the CRO for Law Logic and Email Agency. On this episode, we're talking about when to build, when to buy, and how to scale smart partnerships, especially in a legal services environment where growth depends on the right mix of people, process, technology, and outside relationships. Joining us is Andrew Klint, an operations and growth leader specializes in building high performing teams and scalable systems within the legal services industry. Andrew leads intake and client acquisition at a rapidly growing national Social Security disability law firm, where he has helped transform operations, redesign acquisition strategies, and drive significant growth while improving efficiency and the client experience. During his tenure, the firm has expanded its signed client volume while reducing acquisition costs through process optimization, strategic marketing partnerships, stronger intake systems, and a relentless focus on operational excellence. Andrew is known for building data driven processes, developing high performance intake and sales teams, and implementing technology that allows organizations to scale without sacrificing quality. But Andrew's approach to growth goes beyond the numbers. His philosophy is rooted in investing in people, building repeatable systems, creating cultures of accountability, and never losing sight of the individuals being served. In Social Security disability, every client represents someone navigating one of the most difficult moments in their life, and that client experience remains at the center of every decision. In this conversation, we'll get into how firms should think about scaling, where partnerships can accelerate growth, when it makes sense to build internally, when it makes sense to buy or partner, and how leaders can grow without losing control of quality, culture, or client service. This is the Logic Exchange, and this is when to build, when to buy, scaling smart partnerships with special guest Andrew Klint. Welcome, Andrew. Let's jump in.
Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So, just coming out of the Fourth of July holiday, did you have a good Fourth?
Had a good fourth. Yes. A lot of sun, family, friends. It was a great 4th of July.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. We did the same. We had some friends in town. We spent probably too much time in the pool, maybe not enough sunblock, but that's okay, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, let's jump right in. Always starting off with partner strategy, evaluation, and lead origin. How do you vet and choose your marketing and or intake partners?
Well, I think the one of the biggest things that when looking at vetting marketing partners is that you're kind of looking at the shared goals,
Mhm.
goals that we have, and hopefully the same goals that a partner would have as well. Transparency plays a big issue as well. Making sure that our partners, our marketing partners, are seeing how our intake group is doing or how our
Mhm.
application group is doing by automated systems, automated mailings that go out that show how our production is being done, and the transparency on their end as well is about how different initiatives are being generated on their end.
Mhm.
How can that support our team, and how can our team support theirs as well? There's also going to be a willingness to improve as well, not just
Yeah,
stay stagnant, but
absolutely.
also being able to grow and improve together. How can we find new ways um, to grow, not just as individuals, but also as a team? And that's the long-term thinking part of it as well, as instead of just looking at it, how are we gonna how's these programs going to happen, not just day one, but month one, but what are we looking at 6 months from now, a year from now? How do we work together and grow together as a partnership, a true partnership, that we can encompass everything together and work towards and share those shared goals with each other and be transparent. Um, a good quote that I've always, came by was, a good vendor sells you leads, a great partner helps you build a better business. And I think
Yep.
that is true for a lot of different aspects in businesses. A partner helps you build a better business. It just doesn't sell you leads or just doesn't sell you a service. They work together with you on building that together.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it kind of leads right into the next question I have, and wanted to see if you can expand upon that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because what you're talking about is a true strategic partnership, right? Not just a vendor and client relationship. So what in your opinion, what separates that basic vendor relationship from a true strategic partnership in this space? If you can expand upon that, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the best partners, they don't necessarily just defend their results. They improve them, right?
Mhm.
So just because we're hitting they have a goal in mind of, let's just say let's just talk about leads, right? So let's talk about a
Hmm.
lead provider, because that's primarily a lot of the vendors that we work with is that, their, national average is, 10%, 15% case accepted, right? But if we hit that mark, do we want to get better? Right?
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
do we want to get it to 20? Right? Instead of just defending their results, they're trying to improve upon them. So, that has like shared dashboards, right? So our shared dashboard, weekly meetings, making sure that we're staying, not just on par with what they're expecting, but how do we become better? Having honest conversations as well. Instead of trying to, my case acceptance is 20% when it's really 12%. Why would I tell a lead vendor that if that's not true? Am I trying to get something out? That's where the honest conversations come into play. Um, and then the mutual accountability as well is just making sure that we're mutually accountable for what we're doing and how we build upon those relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I think, I look at that the same way when I'm vetting people that I'm going to be working with, right? As the quote unquote vendor. And like, what does that feedback loop look like, right? Like, I don't know what I don't know. And so having that information from our partners is paramount to creating a true partnership in this space. I look at the whole thing like, you've heard the quote, "It takes a village to raise a child," right? Like it takes a village in this too. And how do we work together? How do we get incrementally better? How do you better your best? And sure, if you're hitting all the metrics and you're hitting the KPIs that everyone's looking for, that's wonderful. But how do you take that next step? How do
Yeah,
you go from being a vendor to a strategic partner? And I think it's everything that you said. It's the conversations, it's the transparency, it's the communication, it's the accountability. That people have heard on this podcast a couple of times, but we had messed up with a longtime friend of mine, and we had scheduled an event at the same time as their event. And long story short, we were able to get it cleaned up, right? And he was like, "Nick, it's not that you made a mistake, right? Because everyone makes a mistake. It's how you clean it up that
yeah,
really matters." And that's stuck with me because it's true. Nobody's perfect, right? But it's how you take that information, how you ingest it, and ultimately what you do with it that creates a long lasting partnership. So I completely agree with you.
yeah.
When people are looking to potentially work with a new partner or even an existing partner, right? What information should a firm always ask a marketing partner before working with them, or even along the way while they're working with them?
Yeah, just kind of starting off with just certain questions is like, where do the leads come from?
Hmm.
Right? So, and where do leads come from? Are you generating the leads? Are you buying them in bulk on the open market from other lead firms? Um, you know, uh, what's your conversion rates? Is a big one. How do you optimize your campaigns? Who owns the data
Hmm.
is a good one. How is, consent collected? Is it, do we have their consent to contact them, right? How often do we review the performance? Is this a weekly call? Is it a daily call? I think it's really important to spend time in the, beginning is really, digging into it in the beginning, making sure that the process is correct. And then I think that's the biggest thing is building a repeatable process to have a better client experience because our results are going to give a better client experience as well. And so just getting some good feedback, I think is one of the biggest things is asking is, what type of feedback do you get? Do you have some companies that I could reach out to see, how not just how the performance of the, leads are working, but what is the communication style like? And we've worked with firms before, partners or they say partners, but you can't get a hold of them. When you need something, you can't get a hold of them. We have weekly meetings. People just decide, we have to cancel the meeting for whatever reason. It's like, well, this is important, right? We're not scheduling these meetings just to, say we can't make it to that meeting. This is, we're trying to develop a partnership. We're trying to develop, an opportunity to serve more clients, to serve more people. And if we don't have the process correct, it just makes it that much more difficult. So when you, like you said, when what firms should be asking is they should really be getting understanding how the people work, how your partners work. Do they work the same way as you? Do you collaborate together? Do you have conversations outside of weekly meetings? I think building a good relationship with your account manager or that partner is important. Even if it's just like text messages outside of meetings, right? Just like, how's your day going? How are leads going? Getting to know people on a personal level.
Yep.
Um, because then it's just, I mean, it becomes, you know, it just doesn't become so like routine, right? If you're just having a partnership and then you're just like, it's all business. It's nice to be able to incorporate a little bit of person to person personality in there as well. So, but yeah, I think that one of the, is just, can you audit the process? What does it look like? How do other firms react to you? How do you react with other firms and getting that transparency in place?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Kind of going back to the village, right? And just that whole aspect of it. Like I look at all of these things as an opportunity, right? Every phone call is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to either strengthen a good relationship, fix a rocky relationship, or keep the status quo, right? But
Yeah,
it's definitely it's people remember the way that you treat them, and if you treat them with respect and respect their time as well as their process and their goals and kind of detach from that outcome of what you want versus what they want. I think that that's where a true strategic partnership comes into play, where you're working towards a common goal, speaking a common language, communicating together in the way that makes sense, but then also to your point, it's not just about business. Everybody has a life, right? And what's going on in that life, and not just lip service, like genuinely caring what's going on. I think that's very important. So I appreciate your answer on that. Um,
absolutely.
Kind of jumping into the next part, right, which is lessons learned and ethical sourcing. You and I have been around the block a time or two in this space and have learned maybe some things that work, things that don't, right? I always say to my kids, I learn so much more from my losses than I do from my wins.
Mhm.
And I believe that the majority of people are like that. Could be wrong, but that's just my opinion. What are the biggest do's and don'ts that you've learned in legal marketing and intake along your journey?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things is just investing in your people. You're always gonna get the best, return when you invest in your people. We created with our intake team and our application team, we've created some incentives, some really lucrative incentives on, how we, how we process intake. So, you being able to invest in those people and show them,
Mhm.
what you could achieve or what you could earn. Just the output is crazy on how, once we initiated that part into it, the incentive program, we're seeing, instead of doing 80 calls per day on outbound calls, I mean, we have some intake who are doing 150, 160 outbound calls,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
Because the more intakes they complete, the more cases that we accept, the higher, they have for their incentives. So being able to invest in the people, and it's not just on a monetary side of things as well, it's also about giving people, we had something in the beginning with our time off policy. It was kind of backloaded after they worked there for a certain period of time. But we decided to kind of front load it a little bit more.
Hmm.
It just gives them, if they do have something come up, if it's not a call in, it's a planned time off and by investing in those people, we definitely get return on it as well because they're being more productive, they're more loyal to the company. Um, so yeah, so the other thing is measure everything.
Hmm.
Coming into, I learned early on that metrics are very important in any type of business. And coming into this firm, we didn't have a whole lot of metrics in place. And that was the first thing that I did is I started measuring everything
Yep.
because we need to know, what is our contact rate? What is our reject rate? What is our close rate? What is our case acceptance rate? If we increase, if we do 1,000 more leads, how many more cases would we sign on average? So we can start projecting everything. If we measure everything, we can make decisions, not necessarily just based off of numbers, but we could also make decisions based off of past results. So measure everything is important and test constantly.
Yeah.
It's not just, put something in place and be like, all right, this is good and just let it go. You got to continue to test it. I test things on definitely on a weekly basis, uh, making sure that all of our systems are being tested correctly. I call some of our lead providers. I fill out the form on my own. I do
Hmm.
the intake to see how it goes through to make sure everything is working correctly. And then the last thing is probably making sure you're documenting your processes as well. Um, because throughout time, you're going to have to kind of change things. Everything's not going to work the first time. I like to try new things, and if things don't work, I'm going to fail and I'm going to learn from my failures, just like you said. I learn more from my failures than my successes. So I think those are the do's. So invest in people, measure everything, test constantly, and then document everything as well as you go through. Some of the don'ts and lessons learned is chase volume. I think that's
Sure.
one of the biggest one is like it's just chasing volume doesn't do anything, right? Just because if I can get, 10,000 leads a month, right? Who says I can what's the return on that? I mean, just because there are 10,000 leads, there has to be, good cases with inside them. So instead of chasing volume, ignoring compliance, making sure we're staying compliant in everything that we do. Yes, there's ways to move things along faster. There's shortcuts on how to do things, but you just open yourself up to possible litigation as well if you're ignoring compliance. So making sure you're just staying honest, with the process and honest with yourself as well, because you could get yourself into a situation that you knew how you got there,
Hmm.
right? But you didn't have to go there. And it's
Sure.
just it's just not worth it. It's not worth it for myself. It's not worth it for my company. So making sure that you are not ignoring that compliance side of things. And then hiding bad numbers is another one, right? Just so your boss thinks that you're doing good, but you got some numbers that he can't really see. Don't hide anything. That
Right.
transparency, the honesty. I mean, my reputation or my how I am is it's not dictated on my losses or my bad numbers, right? Or even my good numbers. It's my honesty. It's my transparency,
Yep.
right? And then I mean I think the last thing is just I mean don't scale broken systems. If you have a broken system and you're doing 10 leads a week, or 10 sign cases a week, it's definitely not going to get better when you have 100 sign cases a week, right? I mean, so you
Yep.
have you can't scale a broken system. If something is broken, if there's a leak in your pipeline, you got to patch up that leak and you got to fix it before you move forward. Otherwise, it's just everything is just going to keep, it's just going to keep building and building and building, and then you're not going to be able to, get through it because there's just all this problems. You're just creating more work for yourself down the road. So if you find something that's broken, fix it right away because that also falls back to the people as well. With investing in your people. I mean, you have to have a smooth process in place. Otherwise, it's going to affect the people down the road as well.
Absolutely, man. I couldn't agree more with everything that you just said. There's a couple of things that my partners and friends and family all hear me say all the time because I love the game of golf, right? And
Yeah.
I know you do too.
Yeah.
But it's I swing small, so I miss small, right?
Yeah.
Like if I'm having a bad day on the course, I'm not gonna pull out the lumber on every hole, right? Like
Yeah.
I need to hit the fairway. So par's a good score sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And so I like to, and I think that translates to business. It's a system where you trust but verify. You swing small, you miss small. So you
Yeah.
test. You test a new source. You never go in and put all your eggs in one basket, and you never put your biggest egg in a new basket, right? It's
Yeah.
it's like let's grow together, right? Let's
Yeah.
let's do all these things. And one of the things that you brought up was compliance, and regular listeners to this podcast know that I sit on the board for the NLVA, which is the National Legal Vendors Association. And I actually head up the compliance committee. And that was literally born because I've grown a friendship with Michael Watts, one of the largest litigating attorneys in Texas and in the mass tort world. And he was going after fraud in a very big way a couple of years ago, and so I helped him with that. And it's not that ever took compliance as a something that was just given, but I definitely took it seriously, but not as seriously. When you're talking to a attorney, you talk about their bar card, right? You talk about their livelihood, right? And you as a marketing vendor need to understand the law, maybe even better than they do, right? And be able to work within that law to still make everything happen that they need to have happen, but in a compliant way. And if that means that instead of pushing out 100 leads in a week, you're doing 50, then so be it, right? Like it's just how it is. You have to do the right thing even when nobody's looking, right? And that's compliance, that's integrity, that's all of those things. And so I really, really, really love the way that you answered that.
Yeah.
And we've talked about some volume and compliance here, but how do you balance volume versus verification when you're scaling? Because it is a bit of a numbers game. So you have to have the numbers in order to sign, but it also needs to make sense. So how do you do that? How do you balance those things?
I mean, just long-term reputation, I think is a good one, with volume versus verification is, and trust as well, trusting each other, trusting, that the process is correct as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of times what we do is um, you know, we see volume, we see everything moving, but the process again has to be in place, right, with it.
Yeah,
One thing I just going back, like, scaling chaos only creates bigger chaos, right? And so making sure that, you have steps in place, you have checks and balances in place to making sure that things are being verified, along the way, to just to have, that more trust or that quality in place as well. Um, I'd rather have 100 qualified conversations than 1,000 names on a spreadsheet.
sure. Yep.
Right. Just because, you have that verification there, instead of just, names on a paper, right? So there's those conversations that are in place. And just I think the biggest thing there is just that, building that long-term reputation with a firm, or with a marketing partner, not coming in with somebody new, having working with somebody who's been there before, has done the work, has uh, some information to back up what they're saying, I think is a very important part of it.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's a great segue to kind of the next segment that we're going to be talking about, which is defining success and real performance metrics. Because at the end of the day, to your point, you scale chaos, you're going to get more chaos out of it, right?
Yeah.
So when do you know a campaign is truly working? And what metrics differentiate real growth from just a temporary lift? We've all seen it. We've all seen oh wow, out of the first 10 leads, we had three of them close, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, okay, 30% conversion rate's the new metric. Well, no, no, it's a very small sample size. So, when you're looking at these things and you're looking at the kind of the long-term goals and defining success, again, how do you know a campaign is truly working, and what metrics differentiate real growth from just that temporary lift?
Yeah. I think with that, it's going to go along the lines of, again, the conversations that we have with the individuals from those leads.
Mhm.
What was their experience, filling out a web form, and then how it comes to us, right?
Mhm.
So we've worked with people. There's been, AI is taking over some things. It confuses some
Mhm.
people. We have vendors that we work with that, there has been confusion in the past. Like, do I talk to you? Do I talk to who do I talk to? So I think it's very important with long-term successes that, you know, the client experience, is very important on how they transition through, a web form lead to a contact, from, a firm, and
Hmm.
then how it goes from that to the next stage where they're not, questioning things, where they're not like, okay, what's going on here? It's clear, right? Because I mean, you got to look at it as like every lead is a person. It's not a
Yep.
lead, right? It's somebody who's trying to navigate, the toughest time in their life, in applying for benefits. So it's making sure that they understand the process, that they have a good experience as well. And I think that's probably one of the most, important parts of growing with a partnership is that client experience.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, without the potential claimants and the folks with their hands in there saying, "Hey, I need help," then all of this doesn't really matter, right? And so making sure that they are taken care of, and meeting their expectations, in my opinion, helps meet your expectations and the expectations that we set at the front end of working together. So when you're evaluating your return on investment when working with a vendor or partner, I like the word partner, just, think
Yeah.
it sounds nicer. How do you evaluate that return beyond just the simple cost per sign 1696?
Yeah. I mean, I think, well, how we look at things differently. I mean, I can just say with an active partner that we have, it started off with just leads,
Hmm.
right? It started off with just, purchasing a set number of leads, but then what it came down to is optimization on their end as well. So it came into how, they have certain the way that they market their web forms or whatever. They can see that there's some campaigns that are returning at 15%, some campaigns are returning at 4%. Let's go after more of those 15% for a better conversion rate, because we're not hitting those ones at 5%. But then it's not just that, it's that can we do something different, something new that's happening with a lot of vendors, is that they're going through a cost per sign case instead of just a cost per lead. But there's that transparency as well, is that we can't get to a cost per sign case until they're able to see, how our intake team is following up, right? Are
Hmm.
we are we
Yeah.
following up within 3 minutes of the web form coming into our system? Are we following up multiple times a day through email, through text message, through phone calls? Um, because you lose a lot of opportunity to connect with somebody if you wait more than, I think it's 6 minutes to contact them. So
Hmm.
as long as we have that transparency in place, we can start going to those other types of models. So now, instead of just purchasing leads through one company, right, we are going through a cost per sign case. We're also looking at, we have a live call option as well. So for these web forms, they can click, do you want to speak to somebody live on the phone right now? And so now we have multiple campaigns within just purchasing, as starting just purchasing leads, right? So there's that evolution, that growth with them as well, because the more, again, just going back to the more people that we can sign, the more people that we can help, right? The more people who are out there who are, maybe they're selling leads to a different company, and they are following up with them, and after maybe 10 minutes of the lead coming through, where we're doing it within 3 minutes, right? We have a higher chance of getting them on the phone. We have a higher chance of talking through what's going on in their life and helping guide them in the right direction. If it's not something that we are able to help them with, right? We're giving them resources. We're giving them ways to do it on their own. Something that, your case may look strong here, but it's weak here. Here's are some things to focus on, whether it be getting more treatment with a doctor. But we are, again, it's about that client experience, because chances are, if we get to that point and we're explaining that we can't help them now, but we can help them, if they start treating with more doctors, 6 months from now, they may come back to us because we gave them that experience that other firms may not be able to. And that all comes down to working with your partnerships and giving that experience along the way.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, kind of going back to something I said a bit ago, people remember the way that you treat them. And you're talking to folks, like you said, kind of on their worst day, right? Like, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay my bills, right? I can't work,
Yeah.
whatever it is. And as long as you're providing a service and helping them through that journey, right, which is what the goal is for all of us. they're going to remember that. And whether they sign up now or they sign up in 6 months, they're going to remember the way that you treated them. And I love the fact that that you take that client journey very, very seriously. So one more question in this one, and it's one of my favorites because everybody tracks things very differently, from contact rates to signed rates to wanted rates and all these different things, right? What's one underrated KPI more firms should track in your opinion?
I think lifetime value,
Okay,
right? Instead of just cost per lead, right?
sure.
Is like what is the value of the case? What is the lifetime value of the case? And it's not just, you know, we sign the case and say they win their case, but it's like how we that word of mouth is very important as
Mhm.
well, right? So that referral part of things is important. So I mean, I think that's going to be, a big one is the lifetime value and not just the cost per lead. What is that? What is 1,000 leads and a conversion rate of 15%? What is that lifetime value of the case? Um, and if you break it down all the way down to the numbers, how much are you really spending per lead? If your, average fee to collect is at $4,200, a signed case, right? If that's what does that cost per lead then? Because you're looking at the lifetime value of it. So, um, another one is, the speed to contact, I think is very important.
Yep.
Is like how good your intake team is. How good are you, a lead comes in, how fast are you contacting that person? Because again, after 6 minutes, that contact rate drops off. So if you're not contacting within the first 6 minutes, again, there's a leak in your system and you got to fix it, right? And so um, you can buy, millions of leads, right? But if your team isn't following up on them,
Yep.
right, you don't know. And that's the testing side of things, testing to make sure that we are. Do you have that KPI in place? Do you have that metric in place? Do you know how fast your intake team is responding to leads? Like you can say like, oh yeah, they're probably responding within 10 minutes. But I can honestly say last week ours was 1 minute 53 seconds,
That's
right?
amazing.
I did down to the second, right? Because I have that metric in place. I have that it gets sent to me every single day, right? So I know what they are because I have the process in place. I have the metric in place so that I know how my team is, moving cases through that speed to contact.
Yep, I agree with you on that. And I think being honest with yourself is also a good thing, right? Like knowing the strengths of your team. Are they good at outbound, right? Like the speed to contact, or are they better at inbound, right? Like
Mhm.
it's knowing the players on your team and being realistic in that, right? And so that's why, like for us, we offer folks many different ways to work with us, right? Like we could do just leads and calls, right? Oh, I'm sorry, we can do just leads where, okay, great, you know that you're good at outbound. We're going to give you leads and let you do your thing. Or we could do a blend where it's leads and calls because maybe some of your team is better at ingesting calls, right? Taking the calls rather than chasing. And then, also I've run into folks where they're like, you know what, we just want you to do the full signing for us because we don't have a team. It's just like three of us in this office. And so I think being realistic with your capabilities and having a partner that is flexible to meet you where you're at, I think is a very important thing. And shameless plug, that's what we do. So anybody that needs leads, calls, that sort of thing, please give me a shout. I'd love to chat with you on that. But I do appreciate your candor on the knowing what that metric needs to be, right? Because then you can manage to it. If it's a situation where your team's average time to contact is 1 minute and 53 seconds, that's amazing. And then you see next week it's at 2 minutes and 10 seconds. Well, what happened? Right? Why is there 17 seconds more? 2 minutes, 10 seconds, still nothing to sneeze at. But what changed? Right? What
Yeah.
changed in the mix? And I think knowing GI Joe, knowing is half the battle, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
And I just want to go back here real quick. So another thing that, just, I think one of the most, underrated KPIs is that like the speed to trust, right?
mhm.
How quickly someone, not necessarily how quickly somebody answers, but how quickly can they trust your organization, right? And that comes from professionalism, knowledge, empathy, right? I mean, your intake team is they're not just doing intake, they're in sales,
Hmm.
right?
And they're
So
selling you. They're selling
yeah,
you
yeah,
while helping the potential claimant.
yeah. So they're selling the firm, right?
Hmm.
So you get somebody on the phone, how quickly can you get that person to trust your organization, right? And that comes from, the knowledge, having an intake team that is knowledgeable about what they're saying, who can answer questions openly, professionalism, and being empathetic. I mean, if somebody's calling and they're talking like, oh, I've had this really bad migraine the past 2 days. I haven't been able to sleep. Well, taking that couple seconds, I'm sorry you're going through that. That must be very difficult, and just have showing that empathetic part of things because all it's going to do, it's going to build that trust. It's going to create that client experience, and it's just going to help, with not only with your organization, but also with the people that you're helping as well.
Yep, I agree with you. It's again, people remember the way that you treat them, and I think that I think that that's a big part of it. And I love what you just said. Your intake team is an extension of your sales team because it truly is. That's where people get to learn about like what's in it for them, right? Like why should I work with you? And there's so many people, they have their hand in the air, but they really have the pick of the litter. They can go work with whomever they want to. And so I
Yeah.
love that you answered that question that way because it's so very true. Your intake team is your kind of your first line of defense, but also your first line of retention, right? Like I was talking to Andrew and he really cared. He cared about my situation. He made me feel important during this. And that's a really rare thing. And I love that you answered it that way. That was a great answer. Um, Sorry about that. Um, so the kind of the next section is innovation, automation, and evolution. What marketing innovation or channel are you watching closely in 2026?
AI. AI is, definitely reshaping a lot of the things in, a lot of different types of business. And not just AI. I mean, I think AI should eliminate repetitive work, right? Not human
Mhm.
relationships, right? So when we're looking at AI, it's not AI is taking over to do those human relationship parts, right? It's taking over scheduling. How are we scheduling, from intake to our application teams, right? Are we finding ways that we can be, more efficient without losing that human relationship aspect of things? Um, you know, Summaries, follow-ups, lead routing, how things get routed around. So definitely for 2026 and into 2027, AI is going to play an important part in in our intake and application. It already is.
Mhm.
We have some partners that we're using to help. Um, we find that sometimes we get a bottleneck at our application, right? And that's probably the most difficult part for any law firm is the application. How do we get, you know, a good application for somebody submitted, in the least amount of time with the most amount of information, right? So are there tools out there that you can use that they can get the client prepared for the application better instead of just saying, hey, we need your doctors, your medications, right? And then that conversation is going to last an hour. There's tools out there that help, reduce that down to, you know, a 30-minute conversation instead of an hour communication. So utilizing certain AI that helps with tasks related, not necessarily the human relationship side,
Sure.
because that is very important, is that you have that human relationship side of things. But just finding new ways that we can be, involve technology into our systems, and slowly build in because there's a lot of regulations behind it, beside or outside of it, making sure we're not just using information from AI, that could come back and bite us in the end. We want to make sure that we are educated on it before we move into it. But just finding that technology is the most important part and using AI for, you know, to eliminate that repetitive work that we would do is important.
Yep.
And it's all out there, right? I mean, everyone has it out there, right?
Hmm.
Whether it be from medical records to, mail companies to, allowing us to take work off of us that can be summarized, but still not going off the guardrails of what AI can do sometimes. So,
Absolutely, man. I agree. It's a tool to be utilized, not maybe one to be dependent upon, because there is that human interaction. But if you can get, 10%, 30%, 50% better, that just serves everybody in the entire process better, from the claimant to your intake staff to yourself, right? And so I think that utilizing those tools to make yourself more efficient, I think that's a great thing, because I think we could all agree that having a little bit more time in the day, and maybe being able to concentrate a little bit more on the Jims and the Joes and the Jills and the Janes, rather than paperwork, is probably a very beautiful thing. Um, so you touched on AI and how it's kind of changing the claimant qualification and communication side of things. But do you see the industry shifting from speed first to compliance first when scaling campaigns, or in your opinion, is speed still king?
I think speed is still king. I mean, for a lot of companies, speed is still king, definitely.
Yeah,
Um, but the thing is this like kind of going like, speed and compliance, right? I think the companies that will win are the ones that move quickly without cutting those corners,
sure.
right? And I feel like it's especially with new firms or new law firms or social security law firms, is that you have a new firm coming into the space, right? Is that, you're not going to be cash positive until 5 years down the road from now, right? But how
Yeah,
do I get
yeah,
to be cash positive in 2 years or 3 years? Chances are they're going to be cutting corners, right?
yep,
And that's where it's speed or compliance. I mean, you got to figure out which one's most important, not only, to your company, but also to your morals. I mean, what do you believe in, right?
sure. Yeah, who
Important.
are you?
Do it.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
do right by the client, right? And you're going to be successful. If you take away numbers, how, cost per sign lead, you take away, how many leads you're going to get, what is your revenue per signed case, those sort of things, and you just focus on the client, like the client's experience, what the client needs, right? I think empathy is still the most competitive advantage that any firm can have. Is if you take
I like
care of
that.
your client, right, you're going to be successful, right? But if you start cutting corners, it's not only bad for your company, but it's also, it's bad for your client as well,
Well, and
because
they can
they're
see
going to see it.
that. They're going to
Exactly.
see it,
They're going
right?
to
They're
see
going to
it. Yeah.
see it. They're going to feel it. It's just not going to feel good. And people, again, remember the way that you treat them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So kind of moving into the last couple of sections here. This next one's one of my favorites, because I always learn something new that I can utilize in my own in my own life and in my own career. The next part's about the future of legal marketing and claimant acquisition. How do you see claimant acquisition landscape evolving as privacy regulations and TCPA enforcement tighten? Like we spent a lot of time talking about compliance and kind of the do's and don'ts and whatnot, but do you see that landscape evolving as that noose kind of tightens a little bit, or do you think it just kind of is what it is?
Well, I think consumers are demanding transparency,
Mhm.
and then, regulators are demanding accountability, right? And I think it's healthy for the industry, right? I do. Privacy laws are going to be, what's most important there. I think for the future of, SSDI acquisition, you're going to look at like, better, or higher compliance, better client education, personalized communications with them. I think that, the transparency is going to be like one of the most important parts of it. Um, Predictive analytics. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's just that I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy
Mhm.
with this, is that, the future of marketing is that we do work together on things. There's, even with, like, SB 37 out in California.
Mhm. And
Um,
the new one in Colorado. Yeah,
and then,
yeah,
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 and the
yeah.
new one in Colorado. I mean, so it's just, it's healthy. We can't just continue to do the same thing over and over again. right? Everything has to evolve. Everything has to change. And again, I think what it's doing a lot of it's trying to protect the consumer.
Hmm.
And they need the protection because, I say this, there's a lot of sharks out there,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of sharks out there. And my goal, what I've learned early on is that, like I said, just keep going back to is do right by the client, do right by the customer. Because this is the most difficult part of their life that they're going through. And that's where we stand is that we are very empathetic with that part of it, is that Social Security has been a big part of my family's life growing up.
Yep.
It helped, my grandparents with, a child with Down syndrome, my aunt, an uncle who was a or quadriplegic. I had some injuries, in my life or sometimes that I was in the hospital that helped my family as well. Um, but again, like I get that side of things. I know what they're going through because I've dealt with it firsthand,
Sure. Yeah.
right? And so we need to have laws, we need to have regulations that protect the general public, with marketing because it is evolving. And sooner or later it is going to be taken over by a chat bot, right? Who is not going to have that human interaction, and how do people get protected from that? So, I think it's just, I mean, higher compliance and better client education is going to be what's the most important part of the future of legal marketing.
Absolutely. And I think that spreads across all forms of legal marketing, right? Not just SSDI or single event or mass tort, which we all play in. It's an interesting time. Like a couple of years ago, everyone was hopefully in theory getting ready for one to one, and then that went away. But when we see that kind of happening in California and now followed by Colorado, I really believe that that's where the industry is going to end up going. And everyone just picking on Colorado a little bit. It seems like the whole state's on fire right now, as it usually is most summers.
Yeah.
But what comes out of that is beautiful new growth, and that's the way that I look at all of these things. Well, while they're I don't even want to say a pain, while they're different than the way that it's historically been done, it doesn't mean that it's worse, right? Like you're going to have some players fall out because they simply can't play and do it right. And that's okay because it's like I liken it to a forest, right? Like those guys are going to go away. I'm not going to name any names at all because I don't know who that's going to be, but someone is, and probably multiple someones. And what's going to happen is the ones that do adapt, the ones that do um, lean into the new way are going to thrive. And I liken that to a forest that has a fire, and you get the growth and rebirth basically after that. And it's it might be painful during, but afterwards it's going to be for the better. And ultimately, anything that protects consumers, which let's be honest, you and I are both consumers as well,
Yep.
is going to protect everybody. And quite frankly, if you can't get behind that, I think that you're very wrong. And maybe we should have a conversation. Let's have a podcast on that, right? Like help
Yeah.
me
Right.
understand where you're coming from. So awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, Andrew, we have one last section in this, and
Okay.
it's more just kind of your opinions on stuff. So leadership, culture, and philosophy, right?
Yeah.
What's the hardest part of leading a legal team in today's environment?
I think it's just through constant change.
Yeah.
This is just like you mentioned, what's, California, Colorado, it's consistently changing.
Hmm.
I mean, fees change, um, you know, grid rules change. I mean, there's just so many things that are changing all the time. It's the people are changing, the technology is changing, marketing is changing, regulations change, but people still need clarity. And I think that's the biggest thing is that having your executive team, um, help guide that way through that constant change, who is adaptable to the change instead of, you got to have a process in place or processes in place that, you know, there's room for, e- uh, there's room for involvement, or there's room for growth, there's room for, um, testing new things, or pivoting really quickly if you need to.
Hmm.
but I think that's the biggest thing with leadership is that making sure that you have a path for your team, but you also allow them to kind of, think on their own or allow them to, you know, um, bring in different systems and adapt to those systems. Like change is good. Where a lot of people in any type of business is that they, especially, entry level employees, they don't want to change the way that they're doing things because that
Sure.
just means that they got to learn something new. But having them be open to that constant change is very important, um, for the growth of, the firm, but also for the growth of them as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think being open to those things, right? Like I think change for the sake of change sometimes doesn't serve itself, right? But when there's a reason and you can get people to buy into that, I think it's an opportunity for growth
Yeah.
across the board. And I agree with you. Sometimes that opportunity is a little harder to get to, or at least wrap your head around for some. But at the end of the day, if you're not learning, you're dying, right? And
Yeah.
if you're not growing, you're dying. And so, being open to that, I think, is super important. Um, you've been at several different firms across the course of your career, and by and large, everywhere that you've been incredibly successful. So, how do you foster a culture that values both growth and integrity? Can you expand upon that?
Yeah. I think that, like, I mean, culture isn't something that you write down. Like, it's not something you write on the wall. I mean, you have your policy handbooks, right, that you have to follow, but it's not what can write on the wall. It's what you constantly reward people for, right?
Hmm.
And that goes a long way. One thing that we do is, or we're starting to implement what we're doing is hopefully none of my employees watch this, but um, what it is that we're, it's important. Not a lot of people get mail at home, right? So when recognizing somebody, and some people don't like to be recognized in a group of people, and that's something that we've learned, is that we do handwritten notes or we do gift
I
cards
like
to our
that. I like
employees,
that a lot.
but we mail them to their house, right? So they actually
That's
get
cool.
mail from us, right? And so what it does is it builds that we're constantly rewarding our employees. Whether, if, when we hit, a certain metric or a certain number for the week, I buy them all Starbucks. And they love that, or lunch once a month, right? It's the things that we do without them asking for
Yep.
that creates that culture. And then also the openness as well is that, I talk in the beginning about how it's important that we are together as a team, right? That we communicate about things before we hire somebody in a position, right? I want to get feedback from people in that position. If we're transferring somebody from one department to another department, I want both departments to talk about it. Like, does this make sense? Because
Yep.
then they start feeling like they're accountable for what they're saying as well. The accountability is very important. Um, and so that culture that we're creating a space that people are inclusive. People have, no suggestion is a bad suggestion. That we are, a team that is navigating this path together, that it's just not one individual navigating by themselves. So,
Nice.
yeah, so culture, I mean, constantly rewarding people. I mean, you can write as many things as you want in a handbook, or you can write your mission statement up on the wall, right? But if you're not living that mission statement every single day, you're just not creating a good culture in your office.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, man. I've had a long-standing philosophy that I want to hire people for my team that have a place on the bus. I may not know where they should sit on the bus, right? But I know I want you on my bus, right? And we're going to find a spot that works. I think that and I've heard this quote a million times, and it's one of my favorites. But culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I love that. Now that doesn't mean that you don't need to have a plan, right? And a game plan. But
Yeah.
I think I'd rather take a team of B and C players, right? 10 or 15 B or C players and go and play the game rather than two or three A players that are going to be fighting over the ball, right? Like it's just it's finding the guys that'll roll their sleeves up and basically go into battle with you, right? They buy into it, and you buy into the vision. That's you're halfway there, if not two-thirds of the way there. So
Yeah,
I like that. Last question, brother, and then we'll leave it open to you.
yeah.
What's one piece of advice that you give to firms trying to modernize their marketing and intake operations in today's market?
I think, maybe one of the biggest things is like just don't try to become the biggest firm first, right? Become the firm people trust the most. And growth naturally flows from that. It flows from trust. Uh, I see it, I work for, one of the largest disability firms in the country,
Mhm.
right? I've worked for large national disability firms. I've even worked for large, national other firms, not in the legal industry. But the people become numbers. People become, a value. People become your clients. I'm talking about when I say people. Your clients become a value, right? You start looking at your metrics on things instead of we do have to look at metrics because we have to look at growth. How much are we spending? Are we profitable? Are we not? Where can we change things up? But the biggest thing that we need to worry about is that, or the biggest thing that we need to look at is that they're people, right? We are providing a service to the general public, again, for the most difficult time in their life, right? So we have to be empathetic towards that. I do not want to be, I think that we could be I think that any firm out there with the right, financial means can be the biggest law firm out there. Anybody can do that.
Sure, sure.
But who is going to be the best and what is the best what do you look at when you say the best law firm out there? Like if you were to say who is the best Social Security law firm out there, who would you say? Right? You don't really
Is that
know.
are you asking me that
Yeah, but you don't
yeah,
really know, right? I mean, but you
yeah,
can say
yeah,
who's the biggest,
yeah,
right?
sure,
But
sure.
I think that, I know that we can get to a point that you don't have to just be the biggest, but you could also be the best at the same time.
Yeah,
And that's by being clear with your clients, making sure you're not cutting corners, being empathetic towards them, um, having a process in place, testing your process, weekly, daily if you need to, right? Because everything that you do is all about the client experience, and the more people that you can help, the more people that you can guide in the right direction. So it's not necessarily about being whoever could become the biggest firm first, but it's who the people can trust the most, and growth will naturally follow trust.
absolutely. Be intentional, right?
Yeah,
Like I think just be intentional in everything that you do. Be present, be intentional, and do it with integrity. I think that those are the three things that I'm taking out of this
yeah,
call from today. So Andrew, that's all I really had. If folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
yeah. You can send me an email. It's just Andrew, Andrew at disabilityaz for Arizona, disabilityaz.com. Yeah, feel free to reach out to if you have any questions on anything. Um, Looking for a job, you know, you know,
Fair enough,
anything,
fair enough.
anything like that. Because we are in this, growth expansion within our firm right now, where we are kind of a lot of different things are happening, right? And again, we're becoming adaptable to a lot of the different changes that are happening. We're able to, we've grown substantially over the last 6 months. But with that growth, comes a lot of opportunity as well to be better for our clients, be
Sure,
better
sure,
for our partners, and to work together with partners and build long-term relationships with partners. Because it's not just something we're trying to, do today. When I say we grow, our growth is, it's planned growth, right? And so what that means is that we do not want to go from, signing 200 cases a month to signing, 800 cases next month, because we're not ready for it. Our system will
sure,
not be able to handle it. We always make sure that our system can handle any type of growth, so we're overstaffed in departments because we like to be overstaffed, because that means we're more available to our clients.
sure,
We're not sitting on, 200 overdue follow-ups because we can't get a hold of our clients because our case managers have 700 cases to their name. No, we keep them lower because we want to make sure that we're available to our clients to give that experience to the clients, to give that knowledge to our clients, so that we can grow at a capacity that we can handle instead of outgrowing things, and that's where processes break down.
I love that. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for your time, for spending some time with me today. Again, this is Nick Thompson, CRO with Law Logic and Email Agency, and this was the Logic Exchange. We were chatting about when to build, when to buy, scaling smart partnerships, right? And I think that Andrew did an amazing job of going through kind of the peek under the curtain of how they do it. So thank you for being a guest. And let's chat again soon.
All right, sounds good, Nick. Thank you.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, brother.
All right, bye.
Yeah, take care. Bye bye.